I never expected my boss to say what he did that day. "I want you because you're married. I only deal with married women." His words caught me off guard, hanging like a thick, unshakable fog in the air. At first, I thought I had misheard him. Maybe he meant something else, something professional, something harmless. But the way he looked at me and his lips curled into that knowing smirk told me otherwise. He meant exactly what he said. It had been just another day at work, or so I thought. I had been with the company for a year, handling administrative tasks, keeping schedules organized, and making sure everything ran smoothly. My boss, Stevie Blackwell, was an enigmatic man in his early 50s, successful, well-groomed, and always exuding an air of quiet authority. He wasn't the kind of man who spoke more than necessary, and he certainly wasn't the type to make careless statements. Every word that came out of his mouth was intentional, calculated. But this? This was something else entirely. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Busted Affairs. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. And if you've ever been in a situation where someone crossed the line at work, let us know in the comments. Have you ever dealt with a boss who acted inappropriately? Let's talk about it. Now, let's get into the story. I grew up in a small town, dreaming of a stable, happy life. I never longed for extravagance, just a peaceful home, a loving marriage, and a steady job. For a while, I had exactly that. I met my husband, Marcellus Pena, in college. He was my best friend before he became my partner, the kind of man who made me laugh on my worst days and reminded me of my worth when I doubted myself. We married young, both full of dreams and optimism, even though we didn't have much. The early years were tough, balancing work, bills, and our aspirations, but we had each other, and that was enough. When I landed a job at a mid-sized company, I thought it was a blessing. The salary wasn't extraordinary, but it was stable, and I enjoyed my work. I had no idea that accepting this job would place me in the crosshairs of a man like Stevie Blackwell. At first, Stevie seemed like any other boss, firm, professional, and occasionally charismatic. He ran his department with precision, rarely engaging in small talk unless it was necessary. When he did speak to me, it was always about work, at least in the beginning. He praised my organizational skills and my ability to anticipate needs before problems arose. I took his approval as a good sign. After all, having your boss notice your hard work is always a plus, right? He started dropping by my desk more often, lingering just a little longer than needed. His compliments evolved from praising my work ethic to commenting on how put together I always looked, how my presence brightened up the office. I brushed it off. Maybe he was just being nice. Maybe I was overthinking it. The day he uttered those words, "I only deal with married women," I realized I had stepped into dangerous territory. And I had no idea how far he was willing to take this. If you're still watching, let me know in the comments, have you ever been in a situation where you felt uneasy about someone's attention? How did you handle it? Keep watching, because this story is just getting started. Stevie Blackwell was nothing more than my boss. An authoritative yet charismatic man in his early 50s, he had a way of commanding a room without raising his voice. He wasn't the kind of boss who micromanaged every little thing. Instead, he had this quiet confidence, an aura of control that made people respect him almost instinctively. When he spoke, people listened. When he laughed, others joined in, eager to stay on his good side. I had been at the company for just a few months when I first noticed Stevie paying me a little more attention than the other employees. Initially, it felt harmless, almost flattering. He would pass by my desk and offer a casual compliment. "You're always so put together, Rachel." It's rare to find someone who carries themselves so well in the workplace. I'd smile and say thank you, thinking nothing of it. After all, what was wrong with a little professional praise? Then, the compliments became more frequent. "I can always count on you to get things done, can't I?" he'd say, leaning just slightly against my desk, his eyes holding mine for a beat too long. Smart, efficient, reliable. Marcellus is a lucky man. I brushed it off with a polite smile, assuming he was just being friendly. I had worked for men like him before, confident, successful, and used to getting what they wanted. They thrived on charm and persuasion, on knowing exactly what to say and when to say it. Still, I wasn't naive. I knew there was a fine line between professional friendliness and something more. And in the beginning, I told myself I was imagining things. But then, Stevie started showing up in my office more often. Sometimes under the guise of checking in on my work, other times with no real reason at all. Just taking a break from all the numbers and reports, he'd say, settling into the chair across from my desk as if it was his usual spot. Too much business, not enough real conversation. Tell me, Rachel, what's the secret to keeping a marriage alive? The first time he asked, I laughed, caught off guard. I don't think I'm the best person to ask, I admitted. Marcellus and I are just figuring things out like everyone else. And yet, you seem so content, he mused, his gaze thoughtful. It's interesting, you know, how some women just know how to keep a home together. Keep their husbands happy. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. It was a strange comment, but I chalked it up to an older man's way of making conversation. But then, it happened again and again. His questions about marriage became more pointed. Do you think men are truly faithful by nature? He asked one afternoon, swirling the coffee in his cup. Or do they just stay because they're comfortable? I frowned, shifting in my chair. I think a good marriage is built on love and trust. Trust, he repeated, as if testing the word on his tongue. Now that's an interesting thing. Trust can be so fragile, don't you think? I should have said something then. I should have shut down the conversation and steered it back to something neutral. Instead, I smiled politely and excused myself, telling him I had work to finish. I told myself he was just making conversation. That it was harmless. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. And I wasn't sure I was ready for what came next. At first, I told myself it was all in my head. Stevie Blackwell was just a charming, talkative boss. A little bold, sure. Maybe even flirtatious at times. But harmless. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. But the more time passed, the more I noticed an underlying intensity in the way he spoke to me, the way he looked at me. His words weren't just casual remarks anymore. They had weight. Purpose. Married women are different, he said one evening as I stayed late to finish up a report. He was leaning against my desk, watching me the way someone watches a candle flicker in a dark room. They know how to carry themselves. They have stability and discipline. They don't play games like single women do. I let out an awkward laugh, pretending I hadn't just felt an odd shiver run down my spine. I don't know if that's true. Every person is different. Oh, I know it's true. His voice was smooth, confident. Married women, they're loyal. They don't go looking for trouble. I gave him a tight smile and turned back to my screen, pretending to focus on the spreadsheet in front of me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but my mind was elsewhere. Why was he saying this? What did he mean by they don't go looking for trouble? I brushed it off as just another one of his strange musings, but something about the way he spoke made my stomach twist. Marcellus was busier than ever, picking up extra shifts, leaving before sunrise and coming home exhausted. We barely had time for long conversations anymore. I missed him, I missed us, but I understood that he was doing what he had to do. Life wasn't easy, and we were both working hard to make sure we had a good future. That's why, at first, I didn't mind the small distractions at work. The easy banter. The conversations made the hours pass by faster. But as the days stretched on, Stevie's comments grew bolder. You ever wonder what life would have been like if you'd never gotten married? He asked one afternoon, sitting across from me in my office. No, I replied without hesitation. Marcellus is my best friend. I can't imagine my life without him. Stevie hummed in response, drumming his fingers against the edge of my desk. You're lucky, then. Most women can't say that. Most women feel trapped. You don't ever feel stuck? I forced a smile. No. I love my husband. That's good. His gaze lingered on me. But just so you know, having options doesn't mean you don't love someone. It just means you're human. Something about the way he said it made my breath hitch. I swallowed, trying to ignore the sudden tension in the room. I should finish this report before the day's over. He chuckled, standing up. Of course. Don't work too hard, Rachel. As he left, I sat there for a long time, staring at the closed door. Something wasn't right. I could feel it. And I wasn't sure what to do about it. It was a late evening at the office, the kind where the hum of the air conditioner was the only thing keeping me company. The building was nearly empty, save for a few scattered employees finishing up their tasks. I had lost track of time, buried under an avalanche of reports and emails. I stretched my arms, glancing at the clock. Almost 9 p.m. Too late for comfort, but not unusual for me these days. Marcellus had texted earlier, letting me know he was working late too, so there was no rush to get home. Just as I was shutting down my computer, a knock on my office door made me jump. Stevie Blackwell stood there, hands in his pockets, watching me with that ever-present smirk. Still here? He asked, stepping inside without invitation. Yeah, just finishing up, I replied, grabbing my purse. You shouldn't be here alone this late, he said casually. The parking lot is quiet at this hour. I'll walk you to your car. There was something about the way he phrased it, more of a statement than an offer, that made me hesitate. But refusing felt awkward. He was my boss, after all. Sure. Thanks. We walked down the dimly lit hallway, the sound of our footsteps echoing against the tiles. The elevator ride was silent, but I could feel him watching me, studying me. When we stepped into the parking lot, the night air was cool, and the streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. Then, out of nowhere, he spoke. You know why I only go for married women? I frowned, taken aback by the sudden shift in conversation. What? I said, forcing a laugh, unsure if I had misheard him. Stevie glanced around as if making sure we were alone before turning back to me. His voice was low, almost conspiratorial. Single women are too much trouble, he said smoothly. They're reckless. They sleep around, catch things, get messy. But married women? They're different. They have something to protect, just like me. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Oh. I stammered, unsure of what to say. They're clean, he continued, unfazed by my discomfort. They don't take risks. They know how to be discreet. And the best part? Their honey pot have a different feel. I froze, my grip tightening on my purse. Excuse me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Stevie chuckled as if I was the one being naive. It's true, he said. A married woman's body is different, softer, sweeter. There's a structure to it, especially after birthing a child or two. You wouldn't understand unless you've experienced it. I felt my stomach turn. My pulse quickened. Was he serious? Was he really saying this to me? You're safe, Rachel, he added, his voice almost reassuring. You wouldn't do anything reckless, right? The words hung in the air like an unspoken challenge, a test I didn't want to be part of. I let out an awkward laugh, trying to mask the unease clawing at my chest. No, of course not, I said quickly, stepping toward my car. Thanks for walking me out, Mr. Blackwell. I should get going. His smirk didn't fade. Of course, he said, taking a step back but keeping his eyes locked on mine. Drive safe, Rachel. I got into my car and shut the door, locking it the second I was inside. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. What just happened? I drove home in a daze, replaying the conversation over and over in my head. Every word, every pause, every glance. I felt sick. When I walked through the door, Marcellus was already home, sprawled on the couch with his laptop. He looked up, smiling. "Hey, babe. You okay? You look tense." "Yeah, just tired," I lied, dropping my purse onto the table. I sat down beside him, curling up against his side. I wanted to tell him, I really did. But how was I supposed to explain what happened without making it sound bigger than it was? So instead, I kept it light. "My boss walked me to my car tonight," I said casually. "He made some weird comment about only liking married women." Marcellus raised an eyebrow. "Weird how?" I shrugged. "I don't know. He said something about how single women are reckless and how married women have more to lose. Just strange, you know?" Marcellus chuckled, shaking his head. "Sounds like he's been around the block a few too many times," he joked. "Some men just love to talk." I forced a laugh, nodding in agreement. But inside, something still felt off. Because this wasn't just talk. And I had a sinking feeling this wasn't the last time Stevie Blackwell would test me. "What do you think about Stevie's belief that married women are safer and different than single women? Do you think some men truly see relationships this way, or is this just his twisted justification? Let me know your thoughts in the comments." I wish I could say I saw it coming. That I was strong enough to resist. That I never let the lines blur. But that would be a lie. I didn't mean for it to happen. At least, that's what I kept telling myself afterward, replaying the night over and over in my head, searching for a moment where I could have stopped it. A moment where I could have walked away. But the truth is, I didn't. It started with another late night at the office, just like before. The building was empty, the hum of the fluorescent lights buzzing softly overhead. I had stayed behind to finish a project, knowing Marcellus was working late again. I wasn't expecting Stevie to still be there, but when he knocked on my office door and leaned inside, that familiar smirk playing on his lips, I didn't flinch. "Burning the midnight oil again?" he asked, stepping inside. "Yeah," I sighed, rubbing my temples. "Just trying to wrap things up." He chuckled, walking over to my desk and placing a bottle of wine in front of me. "You work too hard, Rachel. Take a break." I stared at the bottle. "Drinking in the office? Isn't that against company policy?" "Only if you get caught," he winked, sliding into the chair across from me. "Come on, just one glass. Consider it a reward for all your hard work." I should have said no. I should have walked out right then and there. But I didn't. One glass turned into two. Two turned into laughter. And somewhere between our conversation about work and life, the tension that had been building between us for weeks reached its peak. Stevie wasn't forceful. He didn't push. He just knew. Knew how to look at me, how to read the hesitations in my voice, how to let silence do all the talking. And before I knew it, I was in his arms, my breath unsteady, my mind clouded. It was wrong. I knew it was wrong. But it felt dangerous. Forbidden. Intoxicating. The moment was a blur, one that started with the warmth of his hands, the smoothness of his voice, the way he whispered things I shouldn't have let reach my ears. But then something changed. It wasn't like before. The rhythm was different. The pressure unfamiliar. And then, sharp. My breath hitched, and I stiffened. "Wait," I gasped. Stevie didn't stop. Not at first. Not until he realized that my body had tensed, that the moment had shifted from blissful sin to something else entirely. "Relax," he murmured, his breath warm against my skin. "Trust me." But how could I? I had never felt that before. Never in my marriage. Never in my life. And when it was over, when the heat had settled, and the room was quiet again, I felt it, shame. Stevie reached for me again, trailing his fingers down my arm, smirking. "See? That wasn't so bad, was it?" I couldn't speak. I didn't know what to say. And the worst part? The worst part was that a small, twisted part of me had liked it. Not the betrayal. Not the weight of what I had done. But the moment. The forbidden taste of it. The way I had surrendered. I dressed in silence, my hands trembling as I buttoned my blouse, my mind racing with excuses, reasons, justifications. But no matter how I tried to spin it, I had done it. I had let my boss claim what only Marcellus was supposed to have. And for what? For a moment of reckless indulgence? For the thrill of the forbidden? Or worse, because a part of me had wanted it all along? I avoided Stevie's eyes as I grabbed my things. I should go, I muttered. Already? He asked, stretching lazily. We barely had time to enjoy ourselves. I forced a small smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. I really should go. He didn't push. He just sat there, watching me. Knowing. And that was the worst part of all. Because now, he had something over me. And I had no one to blame but myself. The drive home felt like an eternity. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers ached, but I barely noticed. My mind was spinning, replaying everything that had just happened in Stevie's office. I could still feel his hands on me. The weight of what we had done pressed against my chest like a stone I couldn't shake. I had betrayed Marcellus. The thought made my stomach twist. I wasn't the kind of woman who did things like this. I never imagined myself being unfaithful, never thought I'd be the one carrying a secret so heavy it threatened to crush me. But here I was. What now? Could I tell Marcellus? Could I look him in the eye, say his name, and admit that I had given another man something that was supposed to belong to him alone? I tried to picture his reaction. Would he be angry? Would he yell, demand to know why? Would he be heartbroken, silent, unable to look at me the same way ever again? Would he leave? The idea of losing him made my throat tighten. But wasn't that what I deserved? Maybe I should be honest. Maybe the truth was the only way to make this right. But then another thought crept in. What if telling him did nothing but hurt him? Would confessing be about making things right, or just easing my own guilt? Because no matter how much I hated myself right now, if I told him, I could never take it back. If you were in my shoes right now, sitting in this car, knowing you had made a mistake that could destroy your marriage, would you confess? Would you tell the truth, no matter the consequences? Or would you keep it buried, hoping it never comes to light? And if you were Marcellus, would you want to know? Could you forgive, knowing that the person you love had given in to a moment of weakness? Or is a betrayal like this something you could never come back from? I need to know what you think. Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. Because right now, I don't know what to do. And maybe, just maybe, one of you has the answer.